Welcome, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of Teachers for Teachers. I'm Dr. Dejana, and I'm here with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Leah. Hello, Leah.
Hey, Dr. Dejana. So good to see you. I'm
So excited today because today we have a really cool special guest. We're going to be talking to Dr. Philip Hampton. Very excited. Now, Dr. Hampton is a colleague of one of our regulars on the show, Dr. Marcella Klein Williams, and she insists that Dr. Hampton is a very interesting, inspirational, and exceptional guest. So let's hear a little bit from Dr. Marcella Klein on Dr. Hampton.
I could tell lots of tales about Dr. Hampton. So, one of them is that he is a terrific dancer, which is kind of my way of saying that he does everything he can to spread his passion about science to the whole population of Ventura County. He's been behind this big thinking of the Science Carnival, of convening all walks of life to come and celebrate science. And that's what he'll talk about today. But he's also been a leader in the county of the executive director for many years of VC STEM, bringing together cross-sector networks to really promote the idea of this really diverse and smart pipeline of STEM professionals joining us from our community. I find him to be very high integrity, very creative, and just a joy to work with. So I'm so glad to have him here this afternoon with us today.
Absolutely 100%. So you can get a little bit more information about Dr. Hampton. It's a very impressive CV that starts with a PhD in organic chemistry from Stanford University. And I'm personally excited to hear a little bit about that as a fellow PhD in science. He's currently the interim associate dean at the College of Arts and Sciences at California State University, Channel Islands, and a professor of chemistry. Of particular interest to our group is that he offers a virtual science carnival that's going to be running throughout the month of April. So I can't wait to hear a lot about that as well. So if you're joining us, we're going to have a great conversation today. Before we get started, though, I want to introduce our panel just to let you guys know who's in the Zoom room today. First off, I'd like to introduce Tim Griffin. Say hello, Tim.
Hey, how y'all doing today?
Tim is a regular with us, and he's a retired STEM teacher, an award-winning singer, songwriter, and storyteller. He's the founding director of Griffin Ed, an amazing nonprofit team of educators and musicians dedicated to raising academic achievement in STEM. So happy to have Tim Griffin with us. We also have Dr. Mark Riddle. Say hello, Mark.
Coming to you from the Hogwarts Library today.
I love it.
Hermione just stopped by.
I love it. So there you have it. Dr. Mark Riddle from Hogwarts Library. He has degrees in music, theology, sociology, and apparently well-versed in the series Harry Potter. He currently works at West Coast University and is a local here living in Los Angeles. Thank you so much again for joining us, Mark. Next up, we've already kind of been introduced to her, but Dr. Marcella Klein Williams, say hello again.
Hello, everybody.
An accomplished leader in education and well known in both formal and informal learning environments, Dr. Williams is a frequent speaker on issues of equity and currently the STEM director of Oxnard College. And then our last but not least panelist joining us today, Anne McMullen. Say hello, Anne.
Hello, and great to be with you again. Thanks so much, Dr. Figueroa.
Awesome. Anne is also an accomplished and respected education consultant based in Los Angeles. Currently, she serves as the project director of COSIN's Empowered Superintendents Program and the author of Life Lessons in Leadership. What an amazing panel we have, a very special guest. I can't wait for us to get into our conversation. Throwing it back to you, Leah.
Okay, so Dr. Hampton, I'd really like to hear the sort of evolution of the virtual STEAM or science carnival.
Didn't start off virtual. COVID made that happen. Well, it was probably back in about 2008, 2009. I had approached some of our chemistry club students. The chemistry club's called the Free Radicals. They came up with that name themselves. And they were championing to become president and vice president. I said, well, I'll throw my support behind you if you can help me make a dream of mine come true, which was a night of fun science, hands-on science with families. And so that launched for the first time in fall of 2009. I was ecstatic that 30 students agreed to help out, and we had only 150 people show up that night, but it was magical. It was great. And, from there, it's now grown to be nearly 3,000 people attending the in-person event. Smaller this last year because it was in early March, just the weekend before everything shut down around the state. And we had to transition this year from the in-person to the online. So it has resulted in some neat partnerships with local organizations doing videos and presents.
And I'm really impressed that it was the students that got excited and put that first one together. Is this one going to be sort of student-led?
Yeah, about half of the hands-on science activities that have been created are either from our Project Promesis students. That's our Hispanic Serving Institution STEM grant from the U.S. Department of Ed. Students who are employed in that grant created videos. And then another population are CSUCI students who are in the Chemistry and Society class, Dr. Safa Khan's Chemistry and Society class. And then another population are future teachers from the credential program, the single subject credential program. So about half to 2/3 of the videos are CSUCI students. And the others are amazing partners from the community, like Channel Islands National Park, Naval Surface Warfare Center, the Naval Academy, Kidstream Children's Museum, Santa Barbara Natural History Museum. They're all people that have, organizations that have partnered with face-to-face science, which I really hope we'll be able to get back to not 2021, but 2022 instead.
I think we are all looking forward to that, getting back to some sense of normalcy and being able to be out there and meet the kids in person again. But what do you see as the upside? I mean, the downside of this year has been obvious to many. Is there something that you would say is an upside of the virtual learning?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think taking an entire educational system that was reluctant to even consider online learning, that wanted to delegate that to the for-profits and transform almost overnight into an online virtual educational experience has changed everything. The campus now is actually challenged going forward into the fall with faculty wanting to stay online and not come face-to-face, partly out of concern still over the COVID situation that might exist come fall, but another part, they had a really good experience. So I think it's going to build, I think, a unique opportunity for academic programs to have parallel tracks where maybe a big chunk of the curriculum could actually be taken online, so you can complete a degree without having to step foot on the campus. And that clearly might require some accreditation approvals for that. But it's really caused a transformational shift in faculty perceptions about it. Some people hated it. Some students hated it. Some faculty didn't do very well at it. Others soared. And the professional development that campus provided was really extremely helpful in helping to build best practice knowledge in our faculty over the summer and build a fall semester that wasn't triage like March through May was, but really purposefully online with high quality instruction.
Do you think there'll be a balance of that going forward? Like, will we see both available? Because I think what you just described, like some have excelled and some have not. They're the introverts who might do better studying from home and teaching from home would be honored by continuing that. And yet there's the other community of extroverts who want to be in person and want to be around their classmates and friends and do fine learning in that kind of environment. So what's the thinking on that? Is it possible?
I think it's a matter of getting the right fit. I mean, some professors would probably prefer to teach online, but they're not very good at it. And so we have to take a look and say, it didn't really work. Maybe reassess your teaching commitment. We're going to have you go face to face because it didn't work very well. For some students, I think there are big advantages to the face-to-face modality, not only from the standpoint of the content of courses, just not being amenable to online instruction. That's particularly true in the sciences, where you really can't do general chemistry very easily online. Even with household ingredients, the experience is very different. And, for some kids who probably it would be their preferred mode of taking classes, have a child on the autism spectrum, I think the online experience would be their preferential mode of learning. But in face-to-face causes interactions with other students, relationship building, which builds that whole social emotional side that's missing in the online setting. So just like with K-12, the social emotional needs of college students are also substantial. Online doesn't fix that. It really kind of makes it challenging for them to be connected and stay connected.
Very interesting. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Dr. Marcella Klein-Williams.
Thank you, Dr. Figueroa. So one of the things that I've loved in the lead up to the Science Carnival are the profile of the CSUCI students. Can you talk about the diversity of your students, and is there one that you'd like to discuss as a STEM major there?
Oh, yeah. My favorite right now is the college student chemistry major, Zaida. She is really helping spearhead a lot of the virtual science carnival development. And she said that she wasn't really interested in coming to Cal State Channel Islands until, as a high school student, she volunteered at the booth that Pacifica High School was running. Every year, Pacifica High School would bring a physics of carnival games. I kind of proposed the idea to their physics teacher there, and she ran with it and developed all kinds of hands-on physics-related carnival science activities. Zaida was part of that. Because of that experience of interacting with CSUCI college students, saw role models who looked like her at our school. I mean, we're 60% Latinx on our campus. We are truly not just a Hispanic enrolling institution, we're a Hispanic serving institution. And just having those diverse role models of our college students visible to the K-12 students, visible to Zaida, is transformational. BC STEM talks about you can't be what you can't see. It's exactly true. You need to see role models. And that's where higher ed in general needs to catch up. You don't need people looking like me, quite honestly, in the classroom. You need people that look like Zaida in the classroom to show our students, you can do it. You can get a PhD.
Cool. I love that. And I like that we kind of tapped into that diversity piece, because my question was, we were talking a lot about, the virtual learning and adapting to that. And one of the things that I think the pandemic has basically shown us, and we talk about this a lot in our panel here, is equitable education. And I think the pandemic has highlighted that there are many issues surrounding equitable education. And it has also given us new tools to address some of those issues. And I'm curious to see what sort of things do you think at the university level are being done, will be will happen in the future, given the obvious issues that education needs to deal with in terms of equitable access?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. No, this morning I was on a webinar and it was entitled Culturally Relevant Pedagogy in STEM. It was all about how do you infuse STEM learning with experiences, content that shows the diversity of a discipline that has largely been the white, Anglo, male people that are being represented in the textbooks. And our campus was a recipient of a National Science Foundation grant sponsored by my colleague in chemistry, Dr. Blake Gillespie. One of the main focus points of it is culturally relevant pedagogy. Part of our HSI STEM grant was working with community colleges to build math competency in the area of culturally relevant pedagogy, where, the way that I was taught as a student, sage on the stage, write everything down on a whiteboard, then it was chalkboard. And everybody just wrote everything down, and then you went home and you studied from those notes, and you took a test. And that's not the way that really any of our students learn these skills, especially not our students that are most at risk in our classrooms. Our diverse students really need culturally relevant pedagogy, collaborative learning opportunities, activities that showcase diverse role models in the content.
I don't want to take this all on, so I can take over, as you all know. So please feel free to jump in.
I've got a question. Now, you mentioned that there were some kinds of science, like, say, lab chemistry. That's something where people are going to have to get together in a room. I'm wondering, in your experience, which subjects in science lend themselves best to online instruction, and which other ones besides, hands-on chemistry lab really need to be done in a group, face-to-face?
Yeah, if you look at STEM classes, there are the standard classes that all administrators would point to and say, you got a problem. It's going to be the same classes across every university. It's going to be your pre-calculus, your calculus 1, your calculus 2, your general chemistry 1 and 2, your organic chemistry 1 and 2. They're extreme bottleneck classes with very high attrition.
Right.
I don't think they work well online. I think those courses need the real high touch of collaborative learning, face-to-face, an opportunity to ask questions, and throwing them into large classrooms online just means students are getting lost and they're not getting that personal attention. So I think those didn't work well. And clearly, if you're trying to learn microbiological techniques of how do you sweep a petri dish, and seeing it online being demonstrated for you is a lot different than having to sweep your own petri dish for the first time. So the bulk of a lot of the laboratory classes had to just be put on hold. We only had, I think, 3 chemistry classes this entire fall and spring that were face-to-face and out of necessity because they required that hands-on.
Yeah.
Ones that worked well were some of our interdisciplinary classes, drug discovery and development, being able to put that online with activities and projects where students could collaborate virtually on examining the drug discovery pipeline and how the science and business both weigh into how a drug is eventually making it to market. So, and I think lecture courses in general, they probably succeeded very well, but those high attrition classes are really ones that we need to commit to bringing back face-to-face as quickly as possible for the students.
One thing that occurs to me, my experience is all with elementary school, and I'm thinking in terms of math, one of the nice things about moving most of it online is that if we can find the right resources, we can have different kids in the same class working on different things that that they're ready for, instead of the whole class needing to be doing long division with decimals right now because that's what my plan book says we're doing. So one of the silver linings in my experience is that with some planning, we can allow a little more versatility to the needs of the student. And for assessment, what we're finding at the elementary level is that instead of a pass or fail on a test, we can make it more of a pass it or spend another week working on it and try again. So instead of failing, it's just pass or not quite yet. You're not ready to move on yet. Has there been any of that at the college level?
It really is instructor dependent. A number of instructors just took the PowerPoint presentations, threw them online at an asynchronous online class where the students read the PowerPoints, or in some cases, a narrated PowerPoint, and that was all their experience. Others really took that professional development opportunity that we had and learned how to use different tools to engage students in the classroom, whether it was synchronous or asynchronous. And the kind of innovation I think you're talking about is something I experienced in college and would love to see catch on more broadly. It was kind of a self-paced general chemistry class. I was a TA for it. It wasn't the class I had taken. But the ability of students to work their way through at a faster rate and remove more complicated material that was stimulating but not required, or to finish a class early even if they excelled. It's not something that has really emerged as other than like the exception. When I talked with one colleague who put his entire class online, said the student was retaking it, was done within the first 3 weeks of the semester, and got a good grade, and moved on. So for that student, it was really a benefit. I think by and large, faculty probably need even more experience in trying to change the paradigm, not just take what you've always done, move it online, but think of new ways of learning, the kind of approach that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just would like to add to Dr. Hampton, first of all, to thank you for your leadership and congratulate you on, we've all heard the phrase, never let a good crisis go to waste. And I think you have really embraced that in what you have told us about the shift around equity. And I do a lot of work with K-12 superintendents and school leaders across the nation, and the equity conversation is predominant right now. And that's a good thing. We needed to be talking about that. But I also applaud how you're having to make the shift with the Science Carnival. And again, I've been involved in a number of conferences where I used to speak in person, and now they're virtual conferences. But that's a tough shift to have to make. But people are doing that and making it work. So I applaud you for that. And thank you for that. And I wish you much success with that. And the last point that you made about when you're teaching online, you simply can't just do what you did in front of the classroom and make it work. It's going to take different strategies in an online environment. And I'm thrilled to hear that happening at the higher ed level as well. So thank you for your work in that arena. Appreciate it.
Just thinking about that too, my sense is that the in-person education would benefit from some of the same understandings that we come about what didn't work online, right? Because like we know that when students have a chance to regroup in smaller groups and to talk about the ideas that they were just introduced to moments ago, accelerating the feedback cycle, like, oh no, I don't really understand this, but Joe next to me does, and now I get it. A lot of that stuff is what makes the in-person thing work, but is not taken advantage of because our exemplars in teaching are poor teachers to begin with. We assume that if you can get a PhD that you can also run a classroom, when that's clearly not the case. But it becomes even more problematic online when all of the move people into subgroups is so clunky still, that it's exposed there, but really it's it's true in the classroom too, in those giant lecture halls. You know, if you don't have them stop and talk among themselves periodically, just check on their comprehension, then, you know, that's wasted time too.
Yeah, completely agree, Mark. You know, I think physical facilities are going to have to be revisited at the same time. I mean, our campus used to be the Camarillo State Mental Hospital. I like to say that our rooms were basically beds lined up next to one another. They were more one-dimensional rooms, which had very poor visibility. But when they started building the lecture rooms for unique lecture facilities, they weren't designed for collaborative learning. And the ability to pick up and move yourself, when you've got something that doesn't have wheels on it, doesn't lend itself to collaborative learning. So, you know, I think if we learn something here is that, you know, online you can throw people into breakout rooms and you don't know what they're doing. At least in the classroom, if you could actually physically move them into little pods and clusters, you can walk around and visit them. And then you take what is something that doesn't need to happen in the classroom, lecture, and instead move that online, and then have in person those collaborative activities that are pedagogically important and culturally relevant to building strong skill sets. I mean, I'm a believer in flipped classroom. It didn't work online. That transition online was very bumpy for me. I didn't know how to do it. But now I have a fresh perspective on what a better approach would be with a flipped classroom as a result of that experience.
You mentioned the for-profits occupying the online space. About the university I work for is about 95% face-to-face, and nearly all of our classrooms are organized for multi-purpose use, so they can be broken down instantly. They're made for discussion. There's, you know, places where stuff can be projected, places where students can plug in. So, you know, there's space in the world for the for-profits to excel and to be exemplars as well, I think.
Yeah, you know, when we got this HSI STEM grant, one of the things we had was a room, and we wanted to make it into a collaborative learning space. And so, talking with the mathematician, asked her, what would your ideal classroom be? And she said, white rooms on every single flat surface that I can get my hands on. So we built the room that way. And my preference would be exactly the same, the ability for students to draw chemical structures on walls. I can look across the room and see if they're on, you know, making progress on a problem, go over and stand next to them, redesigning, you know, learning spaces. And that's costly.
It can be. There was an interesting documentary that came out a few years ago called Teach, and one of the examples was a math teacher who was really struggling at getting her students up to par, and her vice principal came in on a Friday and rearranged her classroom so that, sort of what you just described about the whiteboards, he put whiteboards around put the kids' chairs around the room where the whiteboards were, and the teacher in the center of the room. So she could see from just a glance around the room who was struggling, and then rearranged it so the kids were a strong student next to a struggling student and had them collaborating more. The other thing I wanted to say about the restructuring of the classroom, I hope that we consider that every classroom is also now a mini studio. So and we're competing with the video games and all of the things that kids are attracted to. So making sure that in every classroom we can broadcast to the kids who are at home and be present for the kids that are there and have the right, and that's not, these days that's not expensive equipment, really. That's really far more reasonable than it used to be. But all of those things have become, and we all became on-camera people in this last year. Yeah. And Dejana, I don't know if you noticed, but we are at 5 o'clock.
Oh my goodness. Wow. We were just getting started and the time just, it goes. Well, what can I say? This was a really good conversation that I'm sure we're probably going to continue once we go offline. And hopefully Dr. Hampton would be willing to join us again in the near future. Is that a yes?
Definitely.
Yes. Anytime. Wonderful.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Back.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for joining us. A very, very large thank you to our special guests. And also thank you to the panelists. We always love your additions and insight into the conversation. Well, that's a wrap for us. Until the next time, I'm Dr. Dejana, again here with my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Leah. We are Teachers for Teachers, and we hope you join us for our next conversation.
Thanks, everybody.